Welcome to the week 3 lab for the Introduction to Engineering course. This week during lab time, you are required to complete 2 activities. The first activity is your technical presentation work, which you're going to be working on for the next 1 week. And then also for us to talk about prototyping, which is part of design thinking. So those are the 2 things that we are going to talk about for lab time in week 3. I have already posted the video for your technical presentation, and I hope that you enjoy that activity. It is a very important activity. The prototyping slides that we're going to go through now are just building off of the ideation process that you would have completed already or in the process of completing and posting your videos of your team ideation of a problem, of solutions to a particular problem. So now building off of ideation or the ideate stage in the design thinking process, we're now going to talk about prototyping, which is the next stage in the design thinking process. So let's go through the slide together. And for the prototyping activity, I think when we start lab 3 proper, we will revisit the concepts of prototyping again, because at that point, you're really going to start doing proper prototyping. So prototyping is important because it's through prototyping that we get to design cutting edge technologies within a very short period of time. In industry right now, we have what we call a concept called quick prototyping, where we like to create prototypes within a very short period of time, test out those prototypes. If they work, great, we can launch them into market. However, if they don't work, then we can now retweak and refine them and get them ready to be launched into the market. So the concept is called quick prototyping, and for lab 3, that's what you're doing, quick and frugal prototyping, because you'll only have 6 weeks to prototype a solution to a problem for your lab 3. Linus Pauling says that the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And in your ideation activity, you came up with lots of different ideas, and building off of those ideas, you can now prototype a solution that emerged from the ideas that you came up with from prototyping. So again, prototyping is an opportunity for us as engineers or designers to come up with cutting edge technology or really good ideas or good solutions. What is prototyping design? So prototypes are by and large simulations that reflect a final product. And like I mentioned in the previous slide, it is important to have this simulation of a version of the final product so that we can test the prototype before we invest money into launching the product into market. So if we have a prototype and we test the prototype and we realize, okay, we have a few things to tweak on the prototype, then we will not have wasted money or spent lots of money on time creating a final version of a product that is not sellable in the marketplace. So again, I emphasize one of the important reasons that we prototype when we're designing is so that we can test for the viability of a product before launching it into market. Prototyping and design thinking is also a process of creating simple wireframes to testing fully functional mockups. When you're prototyping, you're thinking of creating fully functional mockups, sorry about that. And so the prototyping process allows you to create those simple wireframes that will build up to a functional mockup that will then lead to the launch of a product in the market. Prototyping is an iterative process. So you prototype, you review, you refine, prototype again, and keep going on in circles like that. And yes, we do not go in these circles endlessly without launching a product into market. We go through this process and launch a product into market. Then we can look at that prototype of that version of the product and then refine it and prototype again and launch it into market. So we prototype, review, we refine. And I say this because when you start your Lab 3 project, you might face some situations where your prototype might not be working as desired, or it might not meet your user requirements that you gathered during your empathy stage or your empathizing phase of the design process. Please do not give up. You need to review what the problem is, what the fault is, refine your prototype and prototype it again. And so we continue in that cycle till we come up with a prototype that we feel is ready to be launched into the market. Importance of prototyping. As humans, we're highly visual. Researchers or science suggest that 30% of our cerebral cortex is devoted purely to vision. And so for you and your team as engineers, it is important that you can have a visual illustration of the products that you want to launch into market. And it helps you as engineers or us as engineers and our teams do a variety of different things. It helps us to determine if the product is in fact reflective of the user requirement or product specification and parameters for design. And if it's not, then we go through that prototyping cycle of review and refine till we achieve the type of prototype that does meet the user requirements. And I also want to point out that prototypes can either be software or hardware. They don't have to just be hardware, because I know traditionally sometimes when we think about prototypes, we think of them as being hardware, but a software can also be prototyped. Another importance of prototyping is to test for usability. And later on in the next slide, when I just talk about the interactivity of prototypes, yeah, hopefully you'll get to understand this a little bit more. But please remember that on this course, our design is anchored on usability, and usability is underpinned by the concept of user-centric design or human-centric design. And that is the approach we're using in this course for the design of prototypes and design of models for different solutions of problems that you will be coming up with, especially for your Lab 3. So when you are prototyping, it's important that you're checking for usability, and it helps us to determine and understand any usability issues before we launch it into market, else we spend a lot of money launching a product into market and then find out it's not usable. So the prototype stage, at the prototyping stage, we really look at usability. Does this really fit with the user requirements? Finally, we'll talk about the 4 qualities of prototyping. So first, representation. This form of prototype is mainly structured for presentation and keynote uses. And so it is important that your prototype is reflective of what you actually want to produce. It is important that your prototype is precise, so we look at precision. The fidelity of a prototype is defined here. So for your Lab 3, we're looking for really high fidelity type designs, meaning your prototype needs to be as close to the real product or the final design as possible. Interactivity, we want to see that your prototype is interactive. Your user can use it. If you're designing a shoe, then it needs to look like a shoe. The potential user should be able to put their feet or their foot in it. And so interactivity of the prototype is important. Then finally, the evolution of the prototype. it is important that your prototype is given room to evolve, to change, because you would be creating different versions of that prototype in future. So it's important that you allow room for your prototype to evolve. Within the 6 weeks that you'll be working on lab 3, you will not have enough time to put all the bells and whistles in lab 3, but you need to allow for that product or prototype to evolve and become better, and for others to enhance it, or for you in future to enhance that prototype. So again, like I had mentioned at the start of the presentation, I will be talking to you more about prototyping when you actually start your lab 3. We will explore how to make sure that you optimize your user experience through prototyping. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you during office hours if you have any questions. There's no assignment for prototyping. There's no activity for prototyping. Just wanted you to listen to the video, watch the video, and we will be working on prototyping when we start lab 3. Okay, take care and stay safe.